Africa. The story of a family of 54. In the cradle of humankind, the story of Africa begins. This vast continent is imagined here as one family of 54 siblings. Each country a unique child of Mother Africa. From humanity's earliest footsteps in East Africa to the rise and fall of ancient empires. From centuries under foreign rule to hard-won independence and hopeful rebirth, Africa's family has journeyed through time together. The bonds between these sibling nations have been forged through shared struggle and triumph, creating an inspiring, culturally rich tapestry of history. What follows is the tale of that one family, Africa, with each sibling's story given voice in a continuous narrative, flowing from one country to the next like an epic tale around the fireside. North Africa. Elders of an ancient legacy. In Africa's far northwest, Morocco stands as an elder sibling opening the gate of the continent to the Atlantic and Mediterranean. For centuries, Morocco's cities like Fez and Marrakesh thrived as centers of learning and trade. Medieval dynasties such as the Almoravids and Almohads united the Maghreb, and scholars like the famed traveler Ibn Battuta journeyed from this land. Though never fully colonized, Morocco endured a dual French and Spanish protectorate until reclaiming independence in 1956. The Moroccan people's resistance, led by King Mohammed V and nationalists, secured sovereignty while the ancient Alauiki dynasty continued to reign. Today Morocco bridges Arab and African identities, remembering its historic role in medieval Andalusian culture and proudly carrying forward a legacy of tolerance and scholarship. Eastward, Algeria shares this proud heritage. Its coastal cities remember Carthage, the mighty Phoenician city-state in present-day Tunisia, and legendary general Hannibal who nearly bested Rome in the 3rd century BCE. Algeria's own ancestors, the Numidian Berbers, produced King Massinissa and later a fierce warrior queen named Dia al-Kahina, who united Berber tribes to fight the 7th century Arab invasion. In modern times, Algeria suffered greatly under French colonization. A brutal 8-year war of independence, 1954 to 1962, ensued, led by the FLM, National Liberation Front. And despite immense costs and violence, Algeria achieved freedom in 1962. Revolutionary heroes like Emir Abdelkader and later Ahmed Ben Bella became symbols of resistance. After independence, Algeria navigated periods of single-party rule and even a civil war in the 1990s, yet emerged resilient. The country stands tall as the largest nation in Africa by area, rich in oil and the spirit of its people, and an anchor of the Maghreb family. The story continues in Tunisia, a smaller sibling, but one of great antiquity. Here flourished ancient Carthage, whose seafaring traders and generals like Hannibal left a mark on world history. Roman ruins at Carthage and El Jem still testify to its classical era. Later governed by Ottoman beys, Tunisia fell under French control in 1881. Tunisians, inspired by leaders like Habib Bourguiba, pressed for self-rule. In 1956, Tunisia gained independence with Bourguiba as its first president. Often called the father of the nation, Bourguiba modernized Tunisia while respecting its deep cultural roots. The country became known for progress in education and women's rights. From the ancient Queen Elissa Dido of Carthage to modern Nobel laureates mediating democracy, Tunisia's narrative blends ancient civilization with a forward-looking society. It remains a vital thread in Africa's family fabric. Across the desert to the east lies Libya, an elder sibling whose lands were once home to the ancient Garamantes, and, along the coast, Greek colonies like Cyrene. Libya's modern history took a different turn when Italy colonized it in the early 20th century, encountering fierce resistance from Libyans such as Omar Mukhtar, the Lion of the Desert. After World War II, Libya became independent in 1951. One of the first in Africa under King Idris. Discovery of oil brought wealth, but also turmoil. In 1969, young army officer Muammar Gaddafi seized power, ushering in decades of authoritarian rule. Libya's family story is one of extremes, from the breathtaking ruins of Leptis Magna, a reminder of its Rahman era, to the modern upheavals of revolution in 2011. Through it all, the Libyan people have maintained a strong sense of identity, grounded in both Arab and Berber traditions. Libya's tale reminds its siblings of the price of freedom and the hope of renewal. Along the Nile River, Egypt stands as one of Africa's oldest and most illustrious siblings. Truly, a wise elder in the family. The ancient Egyptians built a civilization that astonished the world, erecting the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx at Giza, and cultivating knowledge in fields from astronomy to medicine. 2. Pharaohs like Hatshepsut, Akhenaten, and Ramesses II ruled empires millennia ago, and Egypt's cultural influence spread far and wide. In later eras, Egypt came under Greek, Roman, and Ottoman dominion while still retaining its unique identity. By the 20th century, Egyptians shook off British occupation and royal rule in the Revolution of 1952, led by Gamal Abdel Nasser, who became president and a champion of Pan-Arabism. 3. Egypt formally ended the British presence and declared a republic in 1953 after Nasser's movement abolished the monarchy free. As a leading voice in Africa and the Arab world, Egypt helped found the Non-Aligned Movement and the Organization of African Unity. Modern Egypt, while grappling with rapid change, proudly bears the memory of its ancient glory, the world's oldest continuous nation-state, and continues to play a guiding role among the African family, with its capital Cairo long a bustling hub of learning and culture. Finally, stretching southward from the Sahara along the life-giving Nile are Sudan and South Sudan, two siblings once one. In antiquity, Sudan's lands nurtured the kingdom of Kush at Nubia, where black pharaohs like Pi and Taharqa once ruled over both Nubia and Egypt too. Centuries later, Sudan's people resisted Turco-Egyptian control and British colonization, notably through the 1880s. Mahdist revolt led by Mahdi Mohammed Ahmad. Independence came peacefully in 1956, but Sudan's unity concealed deep divides. The northern and southern regions had been administered separately under colonial rule and developed unevenly. This imbalance sparked Africa's longest civil wars, as the predominantly Christian animist South sought autonomy from the Arab-Muslim North. In 2011, after decades of conflict and a hard-won peace deal, South Sudan was born as Africa's newest country, a literal new child of the African family. South Sudan's independence, midwifed by leaders like John Garang, marked the first time an African country split from another. Though it has struggled with internal conflict since, the young nation carries the hopes of its diverse peoples, from Dinka cattle herders to newer fishermen along the White Nile. Meanwhile, Sudan continues its own journey, from the Darfur tragedy to recent popular uprisings, striving to reconcile its plural identity. Together these two siblings remind the family that bonds of geography and history are complex, and that the path to peace and development is often arduous. Yet, their stories also demonstrate resilience. South Sudan's flag joined the circle of African nations, and both Sudanese states remain bound to their neighbors through shared culture and the Nile that flows through their hearts. East Africa, cradle of humanity and resistance. If North Africa gave the family ancient wisdom, East Africa is the cradle where the family itself was born. In the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia proudly carries the title of one of the world's oldest continuous nations. Ethiopian law links its origins to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and by the first millennium, BCE, the kingdom of Aksum was thriving in what is now northern Ethiopia and Eritrea. Ethiopia adopted Christianity in the 4th century, becoming a highland bastion of that faith. It is the only African country never fully colonized by Europeans. Under Emperor Menelik II, Ethiopia Delta, crushing defeat to Italian invaders at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, securing its sovereignty and inspiring anti-colonial movements across the continent. Though briefly occupied by Mussolini's Italy from 1935 to 1941, Ethiopia quickly regained independence during World War II. Emperor Haile Selassie, the long-reigning Lion of Judah, emerged as a global statesman and a founding father of African unity, his capital Addis Ababa hosting the birth of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. In 1974, Selassie was deposed, and Ethiopia experienced revolution and communist rule under the Derg, followed by recovery from famine and conflict. Today, Ethiopia stands as a populous, culturally rich nation, home to over 80 ethnic groups including the Oromo and Amhara, and it remains a symbol of African independence and pride. Wrapped around Ethiopia like a necklace are smaller, Horn of Africa siblings with intertwined histories. Eritrea was once the northern part of Ethiopia's kingdom. Aksum's ancient port of Adulis lay on Eritrea's shores. Italian colonizers carved out Eritrea in 1890, and it later became a federation, and then a province of Ethiopia after World War II. However, Eritreans fought a 30-year war for self-determination, and finally won independence in 1993, making Eritrea one of the youngest African nations at the time. Eritrea's freedom fighters, led by figures like Isaias Afwerki, endured hardship in their mountains, echoing the toughness of the region's landscape. Now independent, Eritrea cherishes a heritage that spans ancient Aksumite obelisks, Orthodox Christian monasteries, and rich coastal traditions along the Red Sea. Though peace with Ethiopia came only recently after years of tension, the Eritrean people remain resilient and proud of forging their own destiny. Nestled between these giants is tiny Djibouti, another Horn nation whose strategic location commands the narrow Bab el-Mandeb Strait, gateway to the Red Sea. Here, in this arid land of volcanic ridges and salt lakes, Afro-Arab and French influences blend. Djibouti's Afar and Somali communities historically traded with Arabia and Ethiopia. In colonial times it was known as French Somaliland. Upon gaining independence from France in 1977, Hassan Gould Abtidon became the first president. Djibouti City grew into a major port and international base, leveraging the country's position as a crossroads of Africa and the Middle East. Though one of the smaller siblings, Djibouti plays an outsized role in facilitating commerce and dialogue, a reminder that even the littlest family members contribute significantly to the household. On the Horn's eastern edge sprawls Somalia, a culturally rich land whose people are bound by a common Somali language and pastoral traditions. The Somalis boast an ancient heritage too. They likely knew the fabled land of Punt mentioned in Egyptian records. In medieval times, powerful Somali sultanates like Ajuran and Adil controlled trade routes in the Horn 4. European colonizers split Somalilands between British Somaliland in the north, and Italian Somaliland in the south. In 1960, the two parts united to form an independent Republic of Somalia. Early hopes were high as Aden Abdul Osman Dar became the first president of a united Somalia. However, coups and conflict followed. General Syed Barre seized power in 1969 and ruled for 2 decades, after which the country plunged into civil war in 1991. Despite the collapse of central government and years of hardship, Somalia's sense of familial bond never died. Elders kept traditions alive, poets and singers sustained a rich oral culture, and communities like Somaliland, the northwest region, built relative stability. By the 21st century, Somalia began rebuilding, with a new federal government and diaspora Somalis returning to contribute. The Blue Star flag raised in 1960 still flies, symbolizing the unity of Somali territories and the resilience of a sibling that has faced perhaps the toughest tests of any in the family. Somalia's story, from the ancient frankincense trade to modern resilience, teaches the family about endurance and hope. Heading south and inland, we journey into the Great Rift Valley and Great Lakes regions, often called the birthplace of humanity. Indeed, in Kenya and neighboring Tanzania, archaeologists have found fossils of some of the earliest human ancestors, proof that Homo sapiens truly first walked in East Africa. Kenya, with its sweeping savannas, is a sibling whose modern story began under British colonial rule as the Kenya colony. Early 20th century, Kenya saw the rise of cities like Nairobi and the building of railroads, but also the displacement of indigenous peoples from their fertile highlands. Resistance brewed. By the 1950s, the Mo uprising led by Kikuyu fighters shook colonial authority. Jomo Kenyatta, who had campaigned for independence and was imprisoned during the rebellion, emerged to lead Kenya at independence in 1963. He became the country's first president and is often fondly remembered as mere elder of the nation. Post-colonial, Kenya cultivated a strong agricultural economy and became a hub of East Africa, though it faced challenges of ethnic tensions and calls for political reform. Over time, figures like environmental activist Wangari Maathai, the first African woman Nobel laureate, have exemplified Kenya's contribution to the family, a land of innovation, natural beauty, and vibrant culture from Maasai warriors to Swahili seafarers. Kenya's journey from colonialism to a multi-party democracy in the 2000s stands as a beacon of progress. West of Kenya lies Uganda, a verdant land of lakes and mountains astride the equator. In Uganda, ancient kingdoms such as Baganda, Bunyoro, and Ankle long held sway, giving the country a strong tradition of kingship. The British incorporated these kingdoms into the Uganda Protectorate, indirectly ruling through local monarchs. Upon independence in 1962, Uganda faced the delicate task of uniting its kingdoms into one nation. The first years were tumultuous. Uganda's early leader Milton Obote was overthrown in 1971 by General Idi Amin, whose brutal regime scarred the nation. Yet Uganda survived that dark chapter and eventually returned to stability under Yoweri Museveni, who took power in 1986 and has been one of Africa's longest-serving presidents. Through ups and downs, civil strife in the north, economic recovery, and a youthful population pressing for change, Uganda remains a key sibling in East Africa. It is a country of fertile soils and talented people, from literary icon Oko P. Bitek to Olympic champions, and it continues to contribute mightily to the family's collective strength. Nestled among Uganda's hills are the twin siblings of the Great Lakes, Rwanda and Burundi. Both countries are small in size, but rich in culture and history, with peoples primarily Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa, who share language and many traditions. These were once kingdoms as well, the Kingdom of Rwanda and Kingdom of Burundi, known for their unique cattle, culture and dynastic courts. German and then Belgian colonizers ruled them, together as Rwanda-Burundi, and exacerbated ethnic distinctions by rigid classification policies. At independence in 1962, Rwanda and Burundi became separate republics. Tragically, the family witnessed one of its darkest moments in Rwanda in 1994, when long-standing ethnic tensions exploded into genocide, and an estimated 800,000 people, mostly Tutsi, and moderate Hutu allies, were killed in just 100 days. The world wept with Rwanda, But Rwanda showed extraordinary resilience in the aftermath. Under President Paul Kagame, the country stabilized and embarked on reconciliation and rebuilding, becoming known for development, progress and unity efforts. A hopeful turnaround from the brink of destruction. Burundi, too, suffered cycles of ethnic violence and civil war after independence. Yet Burundi produced heroes like Prince Louis Rwagasore, a martyr for independence, and has worked towards power-sharing peace accords in recent decades. These two siblings, scarred but unbowed, demonstrate the possibility of healing. In their highland landscapes, misty volcanoes and terraced farms, the family sees courage and the desire for harmony, reminding everyone that even in the aftermath of unspeakable tragedy, a new chapter can be written. Continuing our journey southward, we come to Tanzania, a nation whose very name is a union of Tanganyika mainland and Zanzibar, the island archipelago. Tanganyika, on the coast and hinterlands where Swahili culture flourished, was colonized by Germany and later administered by Britain after World War I. It gained independence in 1961 under the gentle scholar-statesman Julius Nyerere, affectionately called Mwalimu teacher. Nyerere promoted African socialism, ujamaa, and unity, notably merging Tanganyika with Zanzibar in 1964 to form Tanzania. The Zanzibar Revolution in 1964 had overthrown an Omani Arab Sultanate and a minority government on the islands, leading to a republic that then joined with the mainland. As a result, Tanzania's family story is one of unity in diversity, over 120 ethnic groups and the legacy of Arabs, Persians, Indians, and Africans blending on the Swahili coast. The choice of Swahili as a national language further cemented that unity across ethnic lines. Tanzania played a prominent role in supporting other African liberation movements, sheltering exiles from South Africa, Rhodesia, Mozambique, and more during the 1970s. It also holds a special place as home to natural wonders and deep history. From the plains of Serengeti and Mount Kilimanjaro to Olduvai Gorge, where ancient human footprints were found, the Tanzanian sibling teaches the family about solidarity and nation-building, exemplified by Nyerere's famous insistence that our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of Africa. Just south of Tanzania, two smaller siblings share in that history, Malawi and Zambia. During colonial days, these lands were joined, along with Zimbabwe, in the British-ruled Central African Federation. Malawi, known as Nyasaland under the British, is a narrow land along Lake Malawi. It was guided to independence in 1964 by Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda, who became its first president. Banda, despite later running a one-party state for decades, is remembered as a father of the nation who cherished Malawian identity and unity. Malawi has been called the warm heart of Africa for its friendly people and has managed to maintain peace since independence, focusing on agriculture, notably tea and tobacco, and recently democratizing in the 1990s. Zambia, formerly Northern Rhodesia, also achieved independence in 1964 under the leadership of Kenneth Kaunda. Kaunda preached a humanist philosophy of one Zambia, one nation, bridging the many ethnic groups from Bemba in the north to Lozi in the west. Rich in copper mines, Zambia initially prospered and took a leading role in regional diplomacy, even at great cost. It hosted anti-colonial guerrilla camps, which led to cross-border raids by those regimes. After some economic struggles, Zambia embraced multi-party democracy in 1991, with Kaunda stepping aside peacefully. The stories of Malawi and Zambia, both landlocked siblings with generous spirit, emphasize cooperation and the peaceful transfer of power, qualities vital to the family's harmony. Our East African journey would be incomplete without acknowledging the Indian Ocean island siblings who lie off the continent's southeastern shores. Towering largest among them is Madagascar, often called the Red Island for its laterite soil. Though geographically separate, Madagascar is very much part of the African family, with a twist. Its people are an Austronesian African mix, descendants of Southeast Asians who arrived over 1,000 years ago and African migrants from the mainland coast. They formed kingdoms like Imarina, whose King Andranampoinarenen and Queen Ranavalona I loom large in Malagasy memory. The island's unique ecosystems of lemurs and baobabs evolved in splendid isolation. Madagascar fell under French colonial rule in 1896, and though an armed uprising in 1947 was brutally suppressed, independence came peacefully in 1960. Post-independence, Madagascar saw political swings between democracy and socialism, but its people have retained a strong Malagasy identity and cultural unity in diversity. 18 sub-ethnic groups united by one language. Smaller islands dot the map as well. Comoros, an archipelago at the mouth of the Mozambique Channel, gained independence from France in 1975 and promptly struggled with coups and instability, being one of the family's more restless members. Yet Comoros' history of sultans and its blend of African, Arab, and French influences have given it a rich culture of its own. The island of Mayotte, however, chose to remain under French administration, an unresolved family dispute. Farther out in the Indian Ocean, Seychelles, once a haunt of pirates, became independent in 1976, with James Mancham as its first president. 5. These idyllic tropical isles saw a socialist one-party state under Franz Albert René for years before, embracing multi-party democracy in the 1990s. 5. And to the east lies Mauritius, a multicultural island nation, which passed from Dutch to French to British hands and finally to independence in 1968. Mauritius is a true cultural mosaic. Its people are of Indian, African, Chinese, and European descent, and they forged a peaceful democracy often cited as an African success story. The Mauritian Sega dance and the Seychellois Creole language add colorful notes to the family symphony. These island nations, though scattered at sea, remain close in spirit to Mother Africa, connected by history, trade, and the ever-present ocean that once brought people to their shores. Their experiences of colonial plantations, slave trade, and later development through tourism and finance highlight the family's adaptability and global ties. Central Africa. Trials of the Heartland. We now venture into the Central African siblings, those who inhabit the vast rainforests, savannas, and great rivers at the continent's heart. This region saw powerful pre-colonial kingdoms and endured some of the harshest colonial regimes, emerging scarred but unbowed. At the core is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, a sibling whose story is epic and tumultuous. In pre-colonial days, the region was home to the Kingdom of Congo and the Luba and Lunda empires, sophisticated states with rich artistic traditions. However, in the late 19th century, the Congo became the personal fiefdom of Belgium's King Leopold II. Under Leopold's infamous Congo Free State, colonial agents brutally exploited rubber and ivory, causing millions of Congolese deaths. International outrage forced Belgium to take over and rule the Belgian Congo in 1908, yet exploitation continued. When independence finally came on June 30, 1960, hope was tempered by crisis. The DRC's independence hero, Patrice Lumumba, gave a passionate speech urging pride in overcoming the humiliating slavery that was imposed upon us by force. But Cold War intrigue led to Lumumba's overthrow and assassination, a tragedy that haunts the nation. A long period of dictatorship under Mobutu Sese Seko followed, during which the country was renamed Zaire. Mobutu's rule was marked by corruption, even as he promoted a sense of national culture authenticite and maintain stability. In the late 1990s, the Congo was racked by wars drawing in multiple neighboring countries. Africa's World War, reflecting how a family's conflicts can spiral when not resolved. Yet, the Congolese people are incredibly resilient. They boast a vibrant culture, from groundbreaking music, soukous stars like Francoise, Luambo Makiadi and Papa Wemba made the continent dance to the enduring communal spirit in villages along the mighty Congo River. The DRC today is rebuilding, with its vast mineral wealth and youthful population seen as keys to a brighter future. As perhaps the most resource-rich sibling, it remains a paradox, potentially one of the wealthiest family members, yet historically one of the most troubled. The family looks to the DRC's future with cautious optimism, hoping this giant strength can be harnessed for the good of all. To the west of the DRC lies the smaller Republic of the Congo, often called Congo-Brazzaville after its capital. Here too the Kingdom of Congo once extended, and later the area became a French colony. Brazzaville, founded by explorer Pierre de Brazza, was unique in World War II, as the symbolic capital of free France and Africa. The Republic of the Congo achieved independence from France in 1960. Its first leaders, such as Fulbert Yulu, faced turmoil. By 1963, a socialist-oriented government took charge. The country even styled itself the People's Republic of the Congo. In 1969, during a Marxist-Leninist period. In the 1990s, Congo-Brazzaville endured a brief civil war but has since found relative calm under President Denis Sassou Nguesso. Known for its dense forests, oil resources, and the mighty Congo River that separates it from Kinshasa, the DRC's capital, this sibling often plays the role of mediator and cultural bridge. It shares with the DRC not just a name, but also the soulful rhythms of Congolese, rumba, and a heritage of kingdoms and trade networks. The two Congos, though politically separate, remain twins in many respects, a reminder that colonial borders cannot fully erase ancient kinship. North of the Congos lies the Central African Republic, CAR, a land of expansive savannas and tropical forests. In the late 19th century, various local chiefs and sultanates, like the Zandi kingdoms, ruled this area. The French, seeking riches, brutally exploited the territory they named Ubangichari, which became CAR, often through concession, companies that forced locals into rubber harvesting. An extraordinary rebellion, the Congo-Wera uprising of 1928, saw thousands of Central Africans rally against colonial oppression. Independence came peacefully in 1960, and the country's first president was Barthélemy Baganda, though he tragically died in a plane crash just before independence. CAR's post-colonial journey has been rocky. It gained global notoriety when Jean Bedel Bokassa, a military ruler, crowned himself emperor in 1977 in a lavish coronation, an episode that highlighted the lingering trauma of colonial mentality. Bokassa was overthrown, but instability persisted with coups and conflicts. Despite these trials, ordinary Central Africans are known for their warmth, and the country's natural beauty is striking, from the forests where lowland gorillas roam to the rivers that sustain livelihoods. The CAR sibling shows that even those who face significant internal challenges are still part of the family, deserving of support and understanding. In recent years, African and international partners have worked to help CAR on a path to peace, hoping this heart of Africa nation can find stability and remind all siblings of the value of solidarity. Proceeding to the Atlantic coast, we meet Gabon and Equatorial Guinea, two smaller Central African siblings rich in oil and biodiversity. Gabon, once part of French Equatorial Africa, is known historically for its Punu masks and as a center of the slave trade in the 16th-19th centuries. The French established Libreville, meaning Freetown, in Gabon as a settlement for freed slaves in 1849. Gabon's independence in 1960 ushered in a long period of stability under President Leon Maye and then Omar Bongo, who ruled for 42 years. While criticized for one-party dominance, Gabon benefited from oil discoveries and maintained peace. Its rainforests teeming with wildlife and relatively small population gave it one of the higher per capita incomes in Africa. Today, Gabon is a quiet but important sibling, a guardian of the Congo Basin's ecological treasure and a voice for conservation. Equatorial Guinea, by contrast, had a rougher start. A Spanish colony, one of the very few in Africa, it gained independence in 1968, with Francisco Macias Nguema as president. Macias Nguema's regime turned brutally repressive, driving many citizens into exile. In 1979, he was overthrown by his nephew Teodoro Obiang, who continues to rule to this day. In the mid-1990s, Equatorial Guinea struck oil, catapulting it from one of the poorest to among the wealthiest per capita in Africa, yet the wealth mostly enriched the elite, with many ordinary people still facing hardships. Despite its small size, Equatorial Guinea reflects the family's linguistic diversity. It's the only African nation where Spanish is an official language. Its Bioko Island was once an Afro-Portuguese Creole society and home to writer Juan Balboa Bonic, while the mainland, Rio Muni, has Fang traditions similar to southern Cameroon and Gabon. Equatorial Guinea's story of late colonial neglect, post-colonial authoritarianism, and newfound oil riches is a cautionary tale about governance and the equitable sharing of family resources. Nestled between these is the island nation of Snow Tome and Principe, Africa's second smallest country. Uninhabited until the Portuguese discovered it in the 15th century, Snow Tome became a major sugar plantation hub using enslaved African labor, and later a cacao producer. The islands achieved independence in 1975, along with other Portuguese colonies. Since then, they have been relatively peaceful, with a small population enjoying a multi-party democracy. The gentle rhythm of life in Snow Tome, with its Portuguese Creole culture, is like the soft refrain in the family song, often unheard amid louder voices, but invaluable for its sweetness. It reminds the family that every member, no matter how small, has a distinct melody to contribute. Rounding out Central Africa are Cameroon and Chad, two neighboring siblings with very different personalities. Cameroon is sometimes called Africa in miniature for its incredible diversity of geography and culture, from northern Sahelian plains and Fulani cattle herders, to southern rainforests where pygmy peoples live, to the bustling port of Douala and the Anglophone Western Highlands. Colonized by Germany and split between France and Britain after World War I, Cameroon had a unique path to independence. French Cameroon gained independence in January 1960, and the southern part of British Cameroons chose by referendum to join it a year later, forming today's bilingual Cameroon. Its first president, Amadou Ahidjo, and later Paul Biya have maintained stability, though the country has grappled with unity between its English-speaking and French-speaking regions. Cameroon's rich history includes the legacy of Mandara and Bamum kingdoms, and figures like Rudolf Douala Mungabel, who resisted German rule, and Ruben Nyobe, who led an anti-colonial movement that was killed by the French. Cameroonians have gifted the family with Makassa music, thanks to legends like Manu Dibango, and showed how multiple colonial legacies can meld into one national identity. Chad, to Cameroon's northeast, stretches from the Sahara down to fertile lakelands, a bridge between North and Central Africa. In ancient times, the Kanem-Bornu Empire arose around Lake Chad, one of Africa's great medieval states that spanned what are now Chad, Nigeria and Niger 6. By the colonial period, Chad became a somewhat neglected appendage of French Equatorial Africa, valued mainly for cotton and as a source of labor. Independence in 1960 under President Francois Tombalbaye led to early authoritarianism and discontent, especially among the Muslim North against the Southern-led government. Chad's post-colonial history has been turbulent. Civil wars, droughts, and external interventions, including Libyan incursions in the 1980s. Notable is Hissan Hadda's rule in the 1980s, marked by brutal repression, and his overthrow by Idris Deby in 1990. Despite oil finds in the 21st century, much of Chad's population remains pastoral and agricultural. The siblings' trials, including recent battles with insurgencies, highlight the challenges faced by countries with colonial-era borders that forced very diverse peoples together. And yet, Chad perseveres. The capital N'Djamena bustles on the banks of the Chari, and Chadians take pride in their heritage from the ancient Sao civilization to the proud sultans of Kanem. In the family gathering, Chad is sometimes quiet and hardened by life in the Sahel's extremes, but it carries stories of endurance that inspire empathy and solidarity among all Africans. West Africa. Kingdoms, colonies, and rebirth. Our journey now turns to West Africa, where a dozen sibling nations line the bulge of Africa from the Sahara Desert in the north to the tropical coasts of the Atlantic. This region's history is rich with ancient kingdoms, the sorrow of the transatlantic slave trade, and some of the earliest steps toward African independence. West Africans often refer to each other as neighbors and kin, and indeed, the history of one is deeply interwoven with that of the next. In the far west, the Senegal River has long been a cradle of civilizations. Senegal, at the river's mouth on the Atlantic, is a sibling renowned for Teranga, the word for hospitality. It was once part of the Ghana Empire's far reach and later the heartland of the Jolof Empire in the 14th century. When Europeans arrived, Senegal became a key place in the tragic slave trade, with Gorée Island as a haunting memorial to that era. Uniquely, the French colonial administration made parts of Senegal, the four communes including Dakar and St. Louis, into quasi-French territories, producing African deputies like Blaise Diagne in the French Parliament. Senegal gained independence in 1960 as part of the short-lived Mali Federation, which quickly dissolved. Thereafter, Léopold Sédar Senghor, a poet-statesman and one of Africa's literary giants, became Senegal's first president. Senghor, a major proponent of negritude philosophy, guided Senegal for 2 decades, emphasizing cultural identity and democracy. 9. Senegal has never had a coup. Testament to its political stability, in a region often fraught with upheaval. Dakar, its capital, hosted the World Festival of Black Arts in 1966, underscoring Senegal's role in celebrating African culture. Senegal's family contribution is marked by diplomacy, music, from Youssou N'Dour's Mbalax beats to the storytelling griots, and a blend of Islamic faith and secular values. Nestled inside Senegal's borders is tiny the Gambia, a sibling wrapping around the Gambia River. The Gambia's unusual shape is a legacy of colonial bargaining. Britain held a thin strip upriver, while France took the surrounding territory. Independent since 1965. 10. The Gambia shares language and ethnic groups, Wolof, Mandinka, Fula, with Senegal, and for a brief time in the 1980s, the two even confederated as Senegambia. The Gambia is famous for the story of Kunta Kinte, immortalized in Alex Haley's Roots, and as a one-time center of slave export. 11. More than 3 million people from the region were sold as slaves over the centuries. 11. Today it is a peaceful riverine nation that relies on tourism and peanuts, affectionately known as the Smiling Coast. Senegal and the Gambia. though separate sovereign states, exemplify how African siblings often live in each other's embrace, literally and figuratively. Moving along the coast, we encounter Guinea in French, or Guinea, formerly French Guinea, and its Lusophone neighbor Guinea-Bissau. Guinea was once a core part of the great Mali and Songhai empires, its city of Timbuktu, though now just outside modern Guinea, in Mali, symbolizes West Africa's scholarly golden age under Mansa Musa. In the 19th century, Samori Toure founded an Islamic empire in the Guinea highlands, fiercely resisting French conquest until 1898. Guinea's defining moment came in 1958 when France's President de Gaulle offered his colonies a choice: autonomy within a French community or immediate independence. Guinea, under the bold leadership of Ahmed Sékou Touré, was the only territory to choose full independence, with Touré declaring, "We prefer poverty in freedom than riches and slavery." And thus, Guinea became independent 2 years earlier than most French colonies. The French, stung by this rejection, abruptly withdrew, taking even furniture and files in retaliation. Isolated, Guinea turned to the Soviet bloc and endured a one-party regime under Touré that grew repressive. Yet, Guinea remained unbowed, a proud trendsetter in the family, having been the first Francophone African nation to assert total sovereignty. Rich in bauxite and possessing vast natural resources, Guinea has in recent years been seeking its footing and opening up. Its citizens, like famed musician Mori Kanti, have contributed to a vibrant West African culture. Meanwhile, Guinea-Bissau, just to the north, has a different but equally stirring story. As Portuguese Guinea, it fought one of Africa's fiercest wars for independence under the charismatic leadership of Amilcar Cabral. Cabral, a gifted agronomist and revolutionary, organized the PAIGC, guerrilla movement that by 1973 controlled much of the country. Though Cabral was assassinated that year, Guinea-Bissau unilaterally declared independence in 1973 and was recognized after Portugal's Carnation Revolution in 1974. This made Guinea-Bissau one of the first colonies in Lusophone Africa to break free. Post-independence, it struggled with coups and civil strife, and tragically never quite achieved the development vision Cabral had. Still, this sibling's legacy is heroic. The reverence for Cabral across Africa is immense. He is a Pan-African hero who emphasized unity, even envisioning a union with Cape Verde, which eventually separated. Guinea-Bissau today, though small and burdened by political instability, is culturally rich, known for its Gumbi music and the stunning Bihagos archipelago. It stands as a testament to the ideal of luta continua. The struggle continues in the family's quest for dignity. Next, we meet Sierra Leone and Liberia, two West African siblings whose fates were entwined with the abolition of slavery. Sierra Leone, whose name means Lion Mountains, was the site of Freetown, founded in 1787 by British philanthropists, as a haven for freed slaves from the Americas and Britain. These Nova Scotian and Jamaican Maroons, along with African recaptives freed from illegal slave ships, built a unique queer society in Freetown that blended Western education with African roots. Sierra Leone became a British colony, the hinterland a protectorate, and boasted the first Western-style university in West Africa, Fourah College, 1827. Independence came in 1961, and Sir Milton Margai became the first Prime Minister. Sierra Leone's early promise dimmed as political corruption took hold. Then, in the 1990s, a devastating civil war erupted, fueled by blood, diamonds. The world recoiled at images of child soldiers and amputees, but by 2002 peace was restored. Sierra Leone's family spirit, shown in the resilience of its people and in how former enemies worked toward reconciliation. It has since held democratic elections and is rebuilding, even as it faced new challenges like the 2014 Ebola epidemic. Through it all, Sierra Leone's cultural contributions, from its Creole language proverbs to the cheerful sounds of palm wine music, continue to enrich Africa. Liberia, Sierra Leone's neighbor, has a distinct origin. It is Africa's oldest republic, declared independent in 1847 by formerly enslaved African Americans who had been settled in West Africa. These settlers, known as Americo-Liberians, named the capital Monrovia after a U.S. president and governed the country for over a century, often with a sense of mission to civilize the region. Liberia was never colonized by a European power, making it, alongside Ethiopia, unique in the family too. Heroes like Joseph Jenkins, Roberts, the first president, and William Tubman, a long-ruling mid-20th century president, shaped the nation. However, the Americo-Liberian dominance marginalized the indigenous majority, sowing seeds of tension. In 1980, a military coup by Master Sergeant Samuel Doe ended Americo-Liberian rule. Soon after, Liberia descended into two brutal civil wars, 1989 to 1996 and 1999 to 2003, under warlords like Charles Taylor, which ravaged the country. That Liberia found hope in 2005 by electing Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the continent's first female president, who helped stabilize and rebuild. Liberians have a saying, "Don't care how long night persists, the day will surely break." Indeed, the day broke again in Liberia as it works to heal wounds. Liberia's flag, resembling the youth's flag with a single star, and its founding remind them a family of Pan-African connections across the Atlantic, and its endurance through conflict stands as a lesson in reconciliation. Continuing along the coast, we pass Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria, a cluster of siblings whose modern borders belie a tapestry of ancient connections. Ghana and Nigeria in particular are like vibrant big brothers in West Africa, each influential and populous, but let's meet them all in turn. Ghana, named after the medieval Ghana Empire, though that empire was actually located further north in Mali, Mauritania, was formerly the British Gold Coast. It was here that sub-Saharan Africa's first modern independence movement achieved success. Under the inspiring leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana gained independence in March 1957, the first of Britain's African colonies to do so. Nkrumah's declaration that Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever, rang out triumphantly. He and the people of Ghana had waged a non-violent struggle of strikes and political organization that forced the British hand. As president, Nkrumah championed Pan-African unity, famously asserting that Ghana's independence was meaningless unless all of Africa was free. The red, gold, and green flag with a black star, symbolizing African freedom, became a potent emblem across the continent. Ghana itself has a proud ancient heritage. The Ashanti Kingdom, known for its golden stool and fierce warriors like Yaa Asantewaa, was one of the last to fall to the British, holding out until 1902. Ghana's post-colonial journey saw ups and downs, coups overthrew Nkrumah in 1966, and successive military and civilian governments followed. By the 1990s, Ghana stabilized into a flourishing democracy, often cited as a model in the region. Culturally, Ghana contributed Pan-African icons like Kofi Annan, UN Secretary-General, and continues to lead in African art, sport, and enterprise. The Ghanaian sibling exudes confidence, depth, with its mix of Akan, Awe, Ga, and many other peoples, and a warm welcome that has made it a hub for the African diaspora, reconnecting with the motherland. Just east is Togo, a sliver of a country that was once part of German Togoland. After World War I, Togoland was split. British Togoland eventually joined Ghana, while French Togoland became Togo. Togo gained independence in 1960 under President Sylvanus Olympio. Sadly, Olympio was assassinated in 1963 in what is considered Africa's first post-independence coup. Thereafter, Gnassingbé Eyadema took power and ruled for 38 years. Togo's story is one of a small nation navigating big challenges. Known for the ancient inland city of Kautamaku, homeland of the Batamariba with their iconic mud tower houses and a coast that was once called the Slave Coast, Togo has a rich cultural mosaic including the Awe and Kabi peoples. Under Eyadema and now his son, the country has had limited political openness, yet it has remained generally peaceful. Togolese fabrics and crafts, and the soulful Togolese highlife music add a gentle note to the family chorus. Togo reminds us that even a smaller voice deserves to be heard, and that political stability is precious. Next, Benin, known in colonial times as Dahomey. This West African siblings, pre-colonial kingdom, is famed, and sometimes feared in, history for its power and traditions. The Kingdom of Dahomey, 17th-19th centuries, was noted for its royal palaces and the formidable Agoji women warriors, recently brought to global attention as the Dahomey Amazons. Dahomey rulers like King Gezo and Queen Mother Hangdi left legacies of military prowess and complex culture. The kingdom also tragically participated in the slave trade, which devastated many communities. France annexed Dahomey in the 1890s after stiff resistance from King Bahanzin. Independence came in 1960, and the name was eventually changed to Benin, after the historic Bight of Benin. Post-independence, Benin went through a whirlwind of coups and a Marxist-Leninist period under Matthew Kerekou. However, in 1991, Benin made history by peacefully transitioning to democracy, one of the first African nations to do so after the Cold War. Since then, it has been politically stable with regular elections, a point of pride for a country that once was synonymous with instability. Benin's contribution to the family includes being a cradle of voodoo, spirituality, which originated here and in neighboring Togo, and is still practiced, influencing the African diaspora in the Americas. The annual Vodun festival in Ouidah is a colorful reminder of spiritual heritage. Benin's artists and bronzes, inheriting the name but not geography of the ancient Benin Empire of Nigeria, also highlight a tradition of creativity. Benin teaches that a rich history can fuel a progressive present, and that turning pages is possible, from warrior kings to technocratic presidents, while keeping culture intact. Our West African journey must include the giant Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, truly a boisterous, vibrant eldest brother of the West African subfamily. Nigeria is often said to contain multitudes. Indeed, within Nigeria's borders live over 200 million people and more than 250 ethnic groups, including major ones like the Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo. Before colonial amalgamation, this region hosted powerful entities: the Hausa city-states, Sokoto Caliphate in the north, the Yoruba Oyo Empire and Kingdom of Ife, renowned for its art, in the southwest, and the Igbo's acephalous, non-centralized communities in the southeast, as well as the Edo Kingdom of Benin, famed for its bronzes, in the south-central area. British colonialists gradually took control through conquest and treaties, and in 1914 they merged North and South protectorates into one Nigeria. This diverse land gained independence in 1960, led by statesmen like Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa and Nnamdi Azikiwe. However, the young nation was soon tested. In 1967, the Igbo-dominated southeast attempted to secede as the Republic of Biafra, leading to a horrific civil war that ended in 1970, with Nigeria reunified. The mantra, "No victor, no vanquished," guided reconciliation after the war. Nigeria then went through cycles of military rule and brief civilian governments until finally, a lasting civilian rule began in 1999. Throughout, Nigerians have remained energetic and optimistic, often referring to their country as the giant of Africa. They have reason to. Nigeria's economy, buoyed by oil in the Niger Delta, is among the largest in Africa. Its cultural influence, from Nollywood films to Afrobeat music, pioneered by Fela Kuti, is continent-wide, even global. Yet Nigeria also grapples with challenges, from corruption to extremist insurgencies in the northeast. It is a family member whose loud voice and big personality can sometimes cause friction, but who also often leads the way. Nigeria has provided many leaders in Pan-African initiatives and regional peacekeeping. Its people's knack for entrepreneurship and humor, turning daily struggles into witty proverbs and comedies, endears Nigeria to its siblings. In sum, Nigeria's story is still unfolding, but its central lesson might be the strength found in diversity. Unity in diversity is an unofficial motto, and the power of resilience in the face of adversity. Now we turn northward from the Gulf of Guinea into the Sahel, meeting Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, landlocked siblings, bound by histories of great empires and contemporary challenges. Mali carries a name that echoes its glorious 14th century empire. The Mali Empire under Mansa Musa was legendary for its wealth. Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 astonished the Islamic world with Mali's gold, to the extent that it caused inflation in Cairo. 12. Medieval Mali and later, the Songhai Empire, with its center at Timbuktu and Gao, fostered universities and libraries that made Timbuktu synonymous with remote wisdom. Modern Mali inherited that scholarly aura but started in hardship. After independence from France in 1960, initially as part of a federation with Senegal, Mali endured droughts, coups, and a long dictatorship under Moussa Traoré. A democratic awakening in 1991 brought hope, and Mali even became a model democracy for a time. Yet, more recently, conflict erupted in the North Azawad region, with Tuareg rebels and Islamist militants, destabilizing the country, leading to military coups. Despite these hurdles, Mali's cultural riches shine. Griots, traditional bards, still sing the epics of Sundiata Keita, the 13th century founder of the Mali Empire, and Malian music, from the desert blues of Ali Farka, tour to the core melodies of Toumani Diabate, deeply influences African music at large. Mali reminds the family that the splendor of the past can inspire the present, and that even when a sibling stumbles, their intrinsic worth, cultural, historical, human, remains. Just to Mali's east is Niger, named after the great Niger River that traverses both it and Nigeria. Niger's lands were once part of Songhai and the trans-Saharan trade routes. Cities like Agadez flourished as caravan hubs. French colonial rule brought severe changes, and Niger gained independence in 1960 with Hamani Diori as its first president. Unfortunately, drought and economic woes contributed to Diori's ouster in a 1974 coup. Niger has since seen multiple coups and is one of the world's less developed nations, with much of its Sahara expanse sparsely populated by Tuareg and Toubou nomads. Yet Nigerians have a quiet pride, exemplified by their famed Cure Sali festival where nomads gather, and by historical figures like Queen Sarauniya, who resisted a French invasion at the Battle of Lugu in 1899. In recent years, Niger's reserves of uranium, vital for nuclear energy, have given it strategic importance. Still, its people's lives revolve around the seasonal Rhythms of the Sahel. Niger stands as a humble, steadfast sibling, often soft-spoken in the family council, but possessing inner strength derived from enduring the harsh desert sun and cherishing the precious waters of the Niger River. South of Mali and west of Niger lies Burkina Faso, known as Upper Volta in colonial times. Burkina Faso means land of incorruptible people, a name chosen by the visionary Captain Thomas Sankara, who ruled in the 1980s and remains a beloved figure across Africa for his integrity and revolutionary zeal. In pre-colonial days, Burkina's mossy kingdoms, like Ouagadougou and Yotinga, were famed for their cavalry and resistance to external conquest. The French did eventually colonize the area, and Upper Volta became independent in 1960. After a series of coups, Sankara took power in 1983 and embarked on radical reforms, promoting women's rights, environmental protection, and self-sufficiency. He even changed the country's name to Burkina Faso to break with the colonial past. Although Sankara was tragically assassinated in 1987, in a coup that brought his friend Blaise Compaoré to power, his legacy endures in the pride of Burkinabe people. Burkina Faso has since faced security challenges, but its society is marked by a unique blend of cultures: Mossi, Fulani, Lobi and Moor, coexisting with a strong sense of national identity. Ouagadougou, the capital, hosts FESPACO, Africa's largest film festival, highlighting Burkina's surprising role as a cultural beacon. This sibling's story teaches that even a poor country, by material metrics, can be rich in spirit and ideas. The upright people of Burkina Faso carry on Sankara's ideals of social justice and Pan-African solidarity, continuing to strive for a better life while extending a helping hand to neighbors when needed. Finally, our West African odyssey reaches the edge of the Sahara with Mauritania. Straddling Arab North Africa and Black West Africa, Mauritania is a bridge sibling, combining Berber Arab, Moorish culture with the heritage of the Senegal River Valley peoples. Ancient Mauritania, named for the Moors, not directly related to the Romang Mauritania, was part of the Ghana Empire and later a center of Islamic learning. The city of Chinguetti was once famed as a repository of Islamic manuscripts. French rule arrived late and lightly in Mauritania, only solidifying control in the early 20th century. Upon independence in 1960, President Mokhtar al-Dada led the new nation, aiming to balance its dual identities. Mauritania joined both the Organization of African Unity and the Arab League to reflect this balance. Its post-colonial era saw coups and the controversial issue of continuing slavery-like practices, which the government has worked to outlaw completely. In 1976, Mauritania also briefly annexed part of the Western Sahara as Spain withdrew, but later relinquished it. Today, Mauritania is an Islamic republic, and much of its population still follows semi-nomadic lifestyles, herding camels and goats across desert and coast. The capital Nouakchott, once a tiny fishing village, is now a bustling city on the Atlantic dunes. Mauritania's gift to the African family is a lesson in diversity. It reminds us that Africa's Sahelian children have blended cultures, and that the lines between Arab and African are historically porous. In Mauritania's traditional music, like the haunting Tidinet lute tunes, and in the ney hospitality of a tea ceremony under a tent, one can see how this sibling carries ancient customs into the modern age, binding the family's northern and western branches. Southern Africa. Liberation and unity. Our grand tour ends in Southern Africa, where a group of siblings overcame some of the most entrenched colonial systems and have since grown into a close-knit subfamily. This region's narrative features legendary freedom fighters, dramatic social transformations, and remarkable natural beauty from the Kalahari to the Cape of Good Hope. We begin with Angola and Mozambique, two Lusophone sisters on Africa's lower west and east coasts respectively. Angola, in southwest Africa, is a land that was once part of the Kingdom of Congo and the Kingdom of Ndongo, ruled by dynamic leaders like Queen Nzinga, who fought the Portuguese in the 1600s. Enslaved Angolans were taken in great numbers to Brazil during the transatlantic slave trade. Portugal clung tightly to Angola until the 20th century, resisting calls for liberation. Inspired by Pan-African ideals, Angolan revolutionaries waged the bitter war of independence starting in 1961, under groups like the MPLA, led by Agostinho Neto, and UNITA. Independence was finally achieved in 1975 as Portugal's dictatorship fell. But Angola's joy was quickly marred by a long Cold War-fueled civil war between rival movements, MPLA and UNITA, that lasted until 2002. Today, Angola is at peace and has grown wealthy from oil, though it works to ensure that wealth benefits all its children. The capital, Luanda, is a booming metropolis, and the nation honors heroes like Neto, its first president, and Queen Nzinga for their contributions to freedom. Angola's struggle and eventual stability serve as a powerful chapter in the family album, epitomizing sacrifice and perseverance. Mozambique, on the Indian Ocean, shares a similar arc. It too was a Portuguese colony that endured a decade-long war for independence. Under the leadership of Samora Machel and the Frelimo movement, Mozambicans fought from 1964 until they won independence in 1975. Machel became independent, Mozambique's first president, pursuing socialist nation building. However, a tragic civil war soon erupted, stoked by external forces between Frelimo and the Renamo insurgents. This war ravaged Mozambique until a peace accord in 1992. Since then, Mozambique has rebuilt and even discovered vast natural gas reserves. Its people have always kept their vibrant culture alive, from the Timbale xylophone orchestras of the Chopi people to the fiery marabenta dance music in Maputo's streets. Mozambique and Angola, once battle-scarred, now often cooperate and stand as testaments to the idea that even the most protracted conflicts can end, and old rivals can find common ground. They also underline a theme running through the African family, the pivotal role of international solidarity. Both nations received help from neighbors, Tanzania, Zambia, and in turn, Angolan and Mozambican fighters inspired liberation movements in Zimbabwe, Namibia, and South Africa. The family's freedom was indivisible. Moving inland, we meet Zambia and Zimbabwe, two neighbors whose histories intertwined with each other and with Malawi in the Central African Federation, 1953 to 1963, imposed by Britain. Zambia, formerly Northern Rhodesia, was shepherded to independence by Kenneth Kaunda in 1964. Kaunda, KK, became a beloved father figure, promoting unity among Zambia's many tribes and taking a principled stand against apartheid and minority rule in neighboring countries, at great economic cost, since Rhodesia and South Africa retaliated against Zambia. Kaunda even gave sanctuary to Nelson Mandela's ANC in Lusaka. Zambia experienced economic downturns in the 1970s and eventually shifted away from Kaunda's one-party rule in 1991, pioneering a peaceful democratic transition. Today, Zambians remain proud of their peace. The country has never had a civil war and of natural wonders, like the mighty Victoria Falls, shared with Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, on the other hand, had a much harder road to majority rule. Known as Southern Rhodesia, it was a self-governing British colony where a white minority unilaterally declared independence in 1965, refusing to cede power to the black majority. This led to a guerrilla war in the 1970s by liberation movements, ZANU and ZAPU, under leaders like Robert Mugabe and Joshua Nkomo. After intense fighting and sanctions, the Lancaster House Agreement in London paved the way for an independent Zimbabwe in 1980, with Mugabe as Prime Minister. The new nation held great promise, often called the breadbasket of Africa, for its fertile lands, and indeed, Zimbabwe invested heavily in education and healthcare in the early years. However, political strife and economic mismanagement later caused hardship, and Mugabe's long rule, 37 years, became increasingly authoritarian. Still, Zimbabweans remain among the most literate and resilient people in Africa, and their country's history is full of inspiring moments, from the sacrifice of heroes like Buya Nahanda, a spirit medium who led an 1896 uprising against the British, later executed but revered as a national heroine, to the joyous scenes of 1980 when the Union Jack was lowered and the new flag raised. Zimbabwe's story underscores the value of land, identity, and equitable governance. Lessons the family continues to learn and relearn. South of these lies Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho, Eswatini, and the illustrious South Africa. Siblings who each navigated unique forms of colonial rule. Botswana, formerly Bechuanaland, was a British protectorate largely to block Boer Dutch settler expansion. It had the wisdom of leaders, like King Khama III, Seretse Khama's grandfather, who allied with the British to preserve his people's land. Thus, when Botswana gained independence in 1966 under Sir Seretse Khama, it faced the future with relatively intact institutions. 14. Starting off as one of the poorest countries, Botswana struck diamonds, literally, and, with prudent management, became one of Africa's development success stories, boasting stable democracy and high per capita income. This sibling exemplifies the benefits of good governance and wise use of resources. Botswana also preserved its traditional Kgotla system, village meetings for consensus building, alongside modern democracy. It stands as one of the most stable and least corrupt nations, a true, incorruptible land in practice, not just name. Namibia had a different challenge. It was colonized by Germany as Southwest Africa, suffering a brutal genocide against the Herero and Nana people in 1904–1908. After World War I, South Africa took over and essentially treated Namibia as a fifth province, imposing apartheid. But Namibians, through SWAPO led by Sam Nujoma, waged a decades-long liberation war. With international diplomacy, UN Resolution 435, and changes in South Africa, Namibia finally achieved independence in 1990, with Nujoma sworn in as the founding president. 16. It was one of the last African countries to be decolonized, and the moment was celebrated worldwide. Namibia since then has been peaceful and is famed for its otherworldly deserts, coastal fogs, and wildlife. Its people, Ovambo, Herero, Damara, San and others, have begun to heal old wounds by commemorating historical injustices and celebrating their diverse cultures. Namibia as a sibling is the patient one who waited for their day of freedom, and when it came, handled it with grace, emphasizing national reconciliation much like South Africa did. Enclosed entirely within South Africa is Lesotho, the mountain kingdom, and nearby is Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, Africa's last absolute monarchy. These two small siblings survived as distinct entities through the colonial scramble by savvy leadership. Lesotho's founder, King Moshoeshoe I, in the 19th century cleverly sought British protection against encroaching Boers, thus preserving Basotho independence at the cost of becoming a protectorate. Lesotho gained independence peacefully in 1966. It remains a constitutional monarchy with the descendant of Moshe on the throne, perched high in the Drakensberg Mountains. The Sotho people of Lesotho share language and culture with South Africa's Free State province, yet their identity as Basotho is distinct and cherished. They wear iconic conical hats, mokorotlo, and Basotho blankets, symbols of a nation above the clouds. Eswatini, meanwhile, was able to maintain a degree of autonomy under King Mswati II and later became a British protectorate. It emerged as an independent nation in 1968, with King Sobhuza II, who soon concentrated power and in 1973 declared himself absolute monarch. Sobhuza II ruled for over 80 years, combining pre- and post-independence, one of the longest reigns in history, and his son, Mswati III, now rules, having symbolically renamed the country Eswatini in 2018 to use a Swazi name. The Swazi nation, known for its vibrant reed dance and warrior traditions, is a reminder of Africa's pre-colonial royalty surviving into modern times. Both Lesotho and Eswatini illustrate how some siblings managed to negotiate the colonial era to their advantage, preserving much of their heritage. They show that even within the mightiest colonial structures, cracks existed for determined leaders to exploit for their people's benefit. Lastly, we arrive at South Africa, often personified as the eldest sibling who went through a long, painful journey of estrangement and returned to the family fold. South Africa's history is a microcosm of many African themes. Ancient cultures. Sandrock art dates back millennia. European colonization, first Dutch, then British. Resource-driven conflict. Gold and diamonds. And ultimately, a triumph of human spirit over institutionalized injustice. The defeat of apartheid. Indigenous kingdoms like the Zulu under Shaka Zulu and the Sotho-Tswana states confronted European expansion in the 19th century, but by 1900, the British had established control after the Anglo-Boer Wars. The Union of South Africa formed in 1910 as a self-governing dominion excluded the black majority almost entirely from power. Of course, like any family, Africa has its disagreements and rivalries. There are times when siblings squabble or when one's problems spill over to others. Yet, time and again, Africans have shown a remarkable capacity to reconcile and come together. The family has learned that its strength lies in unity. When Ebola struck West Africa in 2014, doctors and nurses from across Africa rushed to aid affected countries. When one nation's democracy is threatened, others in the African Union raise their voices in concern, adhering to the principle that Africa will not tolerate unconstitutional changes of government among its members. A lesson learned from a past of coups. Looking back, it's astonishing how far this family has come. A little over a century ago, almost the entire continent was under foreign domination. Now, every African nation stands sovereign, its flag flying high. Many have had to fight to make liberty meaningful, battling poverty, disease, and external exploitation. The journey is ongoing, but the direction is clear. Each sibling draws inspiration from the others. Rwanda's recovery gives hope to post-conflict societies. Ghana's stable democracy serves as a model in its region. Botswana's prudent management of resources offers lessons on good governance. And South Africa's reconciliation process provides a template for healing divided communities. The family learns and grows collectively. In this grand narrative of Africa as one family, we see a mosaic of interconnected stories minus 54 distinct pieces, forming one portrait. From the sands of the Sahara to the Cape's windswept coast, from the Nile's fertile delta to the Congo's dense jungles, from the savannas of the Serengeti to the islands of the Indian Ocean, Africa's children have arisen from the oldest soils of Earth to build modern nations while honoring ancient heritage. The family's tale is far from over. Indeed, a new chapter is being written each day. by Africa's 1.4 billion people, entrepreneurs, artists, farmers, educators, activists, and leaders shaping the future. They carry forward the legacy of historical figures we met, invoking the wisdom of a Mandela or an Nkrumah, the courage of a Yaa Asantewaa or an Aminata Toure, and the vision of a Sankara or a Nyerere. Mother Africa, as the elders call her, looks proudly upon her offspring. Through the trials of history, she kept them nourished with hope and spiritual strength. Now, she sees them working to fulfill the promise of freedom, striving to eradicate the last vestiges of poverty and conflict, speaking in unison on global stages, and harnessing their youthful energy. For Africa is the youngest continent to innovate and lead. As a family, they know that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Together, they aim to go far, towards peace, prosperity, and Pan-African unity. So what does this mean for US right now? It means we must tell better stories. We must celebrate builders, dreamers, creators. We must invest in ideas, not stereotypes. And wherever you are watching from, if you believe Africa's best days are ahead, you are already part of this story. If this touched you, share it with someone who needs hope. Comment where you're watching from and what gives you faith in Africa. Subscribe if you want more stories that honor our roots and future. Support creators and projects that build, not exploit. Because every time this message spreads, another spark lights up somewhere. And sparks become flames. Flames become warmth. Warmth becomes a sunrise. And Africa is stepping into the light.